And look who's coming up.
Another edition of Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily here on twitch.tv/Ultimate Fantasy Sports, or possibly you may be watching on our YouTube channel, which you can find at Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. You can also find all of our shows in audio format. If you like to listen on your commute, you can do that as well. Just search wherever you find your podcasts at Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. Once again, my name is Dean Millard. I'll be your host for the next 2 hours, Monday to Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. We are here for this show to try to, first of all, help you win your fantasy league and make it better, but also, secondly, to entertain you for a couple of hours, maybe distract you from the day-to-day. Speaking of this, Justin Herbert, day-to-day with a fractured rib. No kidding. Let me put on my surprise face because he took so many hits last Thursday after the Chiefs, but only missed one play. So we'll see what that means for the Chargers and their situation as we move forward. Something that we will ask Andy. Andy McNamara is going to join us today, as he usually joins us on Thursdays, but we're bumping him up today and getting in your questions. So if you have a question for Andy, please drop it in social media. Use the hashtag #AskAndy. We will find it. Or you can join us on Twitch in the message board and drop your question in there. Andy will join us at 4:20 Eastern Time. 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Tom Gazzola from TSN 1260. Camps are underway. Some notable absences from some camps. A lot of interesting storylines around the National Hockey League that will affect fantasy. And we'll take a look at the Montreal Canadiens in our Dobber hockey preview. The Canadiens have some really nice pieces, but just not for this year. I don't think that Juraj Slafkovsky is going to make a massive impact in the NHL. I'd love to be wrong, and I love rookies coming out, but I think you'll see him stay in North America and play at least probably to start in Montreal and then end up in Laval. But we'll get through the Canadiens as we go. Our top 3 questions of the day, games to watch, and it's Fill in the Blank Wednesday. So we'll play Fill in the Blanks a little bit later on when it comes to fantasy. I want to tell you that Dobber Hockey has filled a void. If you're looking for your NHL player news, your daily news, no more Roto World, no more NBC Edge, Dobber Hockey has you covered. So check them out at dobberhockey.com. We'll have the Dobber Hockey preview later today, the Montreal Canadiens. All right, here is the question of the day. We start every show with the question of the day, and we're getting so close to both of these guys in Major League Baseball, Aaron Judge and Albert Pujols, I guess surpassing or making history. Who are you more intrigued by? Judge is at 60, and we'll show you 60 and tell you a little bit more about what's going on with him. Or Albert Pujols chasing 700, he's at 698. So this isn't who's the MVP, which we can talk about as well. You know, this is obviously Judge is having a way better season than Pujols, but Pujols is having a way better career. Both of them, Hall of Famers. Pujols is for sure. Judge likely gets there as well. But 700 home runs or 62? What's more intriguing for you? For me, I look at it and it's Aaron Judge trying to break that mythical number of 62, trying to reach that mythical number of 62. You remember, he's tied Ruth now. He's got 60. That was the number until Maris Mantle went on their chase. So Maris gets 61. Nobody has done that since 61. That is intriguing to me. There are other baseball players that have 700 home runs. There's only one American League player to have 61 home runs in a season. And the fact that this record has stood for so long, and the fact that, I just, this season ends and Albert Pujols ends at 699 and retires, I still know he had an incredible career, great chase for 700. And I'm always going to remember his career as a whole. If Judge doesn't get 61, which would be crazy, because he's got 15 games to get one home run, nobody's really going to remember this season that much. Now, if he gets 62, everybody's going to remember it. So for that reason, and this question that I'm basically posing myself and to you, I'm going with Judge. If Pujols doesn't get there, I'm still, I'm a little bit disappointed, but it's still wow, what a great career. If Judge doesn't get to 61, it's just another good season, in my opinion. Now, he gets to 62, and it's miraculous. And we'll show you later on where he is in the grand scheme of things. Everybody on that list except him and Maris played in the juiced era. So that's the question of the day. Chime in at Duck Millard on Twitter or right here on Twitch. Let me know what you think. And we can get to those throughout the day and the show. Our top three today, top three fantasy questions going into week number 3. And you might have your own fantasy questions as well. But these are the ones I'm asking. And you should say your. See, that's the problem. My producer is slacking off. So let's change that here. Get that. Oh, we definitely don't want to make a capital R. There we go. So, are your fantasy Dolphins for real? That is one of the questions that I'm asking in our top 3 questions. The Dolphins looked spectacular in that comeback. Tua had 6 touchdowns. Tyreek and Waddle were spectacular, something nobody has done before as a pair of receivers. That's great. But you get the Bills now. So basically, remember all those years where you're like, hey, the Dolphins are playing good. Dolphins fantasy are producing. And then you face the Patriots and they get crushed. Not in Miami. They usually would beat New England, every couple of years in Miami. So now you replace the Patriots with the Bills. So are your fantasy Dolphins for real? Are the players that are producing for the Dolphins, this is the biggest test this weekend. And it's going to be a phenomenal game if they live up to the hype. Phenomenal game if they can live up to the hype. Number 2, could the Falcons be the answer to your fantasy slow start? The Falcons have allowed an NFL high 5 touchdown receptions to wide receivers in the first 2 weeks. They have also allowed 58 points in 2 games. So if you have Seahawks playing the Falcons, good time to just take out your frustrations on Atlanta. Even Rashad Penny, week 3, good option against the Falcons. And the number 3 question I have is, in Joe, you trust? Joe Flacco. We were talking about what would the record be for the Jets when Joe Flacco was no longer the quarterback, which was about the first 4 weeks of the season. The name is escaping me right now. The Jets quarterback that was hurt. But Joe Flacco, he's actually putting up some numbers as the quarterback of the Jets. 61.2% passer rating, 616 passing yards, 6 yards per pass, 5 touchdowns, only 1 interception. This is obviously a stopgap measure for you. You should not be trusting 37-year-old Joe Flacco with the Jets to steer your fantasy. But right now, there's a little Vinny Testaverde to Joe Flacco. Big comeback win over the Browns. He got pounded, but he showed the veteran savvy to drag gangrene all the way back. 60, that 66-yard pass to Corey Davis, that got it going. Then they get the onside kick and caps a 53-yard drive with Garrett Wilson's score. Listen, Zach Wilson is the future, obviously, but I don't think Zach Wilson is going to automatically get the starting job if Joe Flacco keeps doing this. So if you have quarterback, like if you had Dak and he was your guy and Flacco's available, he's a good replacement. We told you this last week. Carson Wentz, same thing. Jimmy G, obviously this week. But Joe Flacco, I was kind of joking about Joe Flacco. Like, what is the record going to be for the Jets when Zach Wilson is ready to come back? Well, they're 1-1, and Joe Flacco is had a decent game against his old team, so it's interesting. Like I said, I'm sorry if Joe Flacco is now your starter, because that's not a good proposition to have. But for spot duties, you could probably do a little bit worse out there, as long as he's going to throw 300-yard games. Like, he's still like outside of the top 20. But for a spot start, if you have a bad matchup or some injuries, not the worst thing. I can't believe I'm saying it, but not the worst thing to look at that. All right. Big story of last night. Just a crazy night between the New York teams. Lindor hit a grand slam. The Yankees were down. And Giancarlo Stanton hit a grand slam walk-off, and it was overshadowed by what happened earlier in the inning with the Judge.
3 infielders on the left side for Judge, and here's the 3-1. Drill deep to left field. There it goes. Number 60. Slide over, babe. You've got some company. Aaron James Judge has tied George Herman Babe Ruth with 60 home runs.
Pretty incredible stuff. Really is incredible what we are able to watch here with Aaron Judge. I absolutely loving it. And yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful story. It's a great story for New Yorkers, because New York has been so bad. So bad for what their expectations. They had such a bad second half, and they're going to make the playoffs. But it's expectations. It's funny. You talk about Boone getting fired when New York is going to win the AL East again. But their expectations, they want to be where the Dodgers are. And we'll get to the Dodgers in a second. But this is incredible, the territory that Aaron Judge is entering into right now. First of all, let's take a look at where he sits historically on the home run chase. So he has 60. 15 games remaining. He's going to break the record. And, he's going to get 61 probably tonight when they get back at it again with the Pirates. 9-8, by the way. 9-8 was the final score last night. It was a wild game. But tonight, you'll have the Yankees and the Pirates again. Luis Severino on the hill for New York, and Ronzi Contreras on the hill for Pittsburgh. So there's a name to remember if the guy gives up number 61. By the way, the guy who caught the ball last night gave it back to Judge. This ball was reportedly worth between $50,000 and $500,000, according to some auction houses. He gave it back because he thinks Judge has given a lot to the Yankees. That's a really good story. I'm not sure if it's the smartest financial story, but it's a really good story. And sometimes we get so caught up in money, and the comments were dumb and ignorant on Twitter about it, as sometimes they can be. But this is where Judge is. So he's one back of Maris. He's tied Babe Ruth now, two of the biggest names in American League history. The rest of those names are all National League PEDs. And again, there was no rule. I look at these guys and think, well, if there was no rule, maybe we should stop complaining about it. But we do talk about it. So the question now is not just, when he ties Maris and then passes Maris, which could happen tonight, but where does he end up on this list, which would truly be a historic season? And we'll get into the numbers in a second here about where that takes him on the MVP chase and all that stuff. But I think he can get to McGuire in 65 and 99. He can have 5 home runs in 15 games. That would be legendary. That would put him tied in top 5 in a non-PD era. Now, check out this couple of stats here, these couple of tweets for just how masterful this guy is. Elias Sports says he is the first player since Miguel Cabrera, who won the Triple Crown 10 years ago, to lead all Triple Crown cats this late in September. Batting average, home run, RBI. It's funny, we still think the Triple Crown, and we use batting average. And it's amazing that he hit his 60th home run to take the lead in batting average. So that's ironic with the way baseball is going. And this is also from ESPN Stats and Info. Judge has put himself in a position to win the Triple Crown thanks to this massive September, where he's hitting .475, slugging .573, OPS 1.017. Or that's his on base. His OPS is 1.590, the highest OPS ever in September. Minimum 75 plate appearances. This is incredible. It is, and listen, Shohei Ohtani is doing something great. He's doing something that Corbin Burns did last year. Judge is doing something that somebody hasn't done in 10, 15, 20, 60 years. So I'm being won over by the Judge. I think what Ohtani is doing on the hill is great. He's not as dynamic at the plate as Judge is. So for that matter, I'm throwing my support behind the Aaron Judge for MVP campaign. That's what I'm going with. I'm going with Judge for MVP because he's going to probably get 65 home runs. All right. That's the baseball story. Some NFL Week 3 stories. Joe Burrow, he's off social media. We'll get to some projections as we go. Is Jimmy G the hottest waiver claim in your league? And the Browns without Jadavian Clowney for tomorrow versus Pittsburgh. Well, does that mean you should do anything with these quarterbacks from Pittsburgh? Yeah, you should bench them. That's what you should do with your quarterbacks from Pittsburgh. Although, we'll ask Andy. That's next. Andy McNamara. I almost combined Andy McNamara with Ask Andy. So we're going to do Ask Andy. If you have a question, throw that hashtag out on social media. We will find you. Like the Mounties, we'll find you. And we will get your question to Andy. We'll talk about some Week 3 scenarios. We'll look back a little bit on Week 2. All that fun stuff. We'll get you ready for Ultimate Fantasy Football on Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern right here on Twitch. And we'll recap the week that was in the UFAFL and UCFFL. That is coming right up here on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily on twitch.tv/Ultimate Fantasy Sports. We're back in a couple of seconds. 7:22 on this Wednesday afternoon edition of Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. My name is Dean Millard. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today. Joining me in the Marsh, just outside of Edmonton. But right now we are going to head east, and we are going to head into the fantasy football zone because my good friend and your fantasy football friend, Andy McNamara, is joining us for another installment of Ask Andy, my man. First of all, congratulations. I saw your Twitter post. You got some pictures in, and it looked like a really nice graduation or some ceremony.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Yeah, great. I love the brick backdrop too.
Oh yeah, it's nice, eh?
That's looking sharp. That is very sharp. Yeah, this was actually back in the summer. The pictures came in. I was awarded the Alumni of Distinction Award from Durham College, where my broadcasting career started back in 2005, doing what was new at the time, Dean, internet radio.
Ooh.
Which was like, whoa, wait, internet radio? What's this fad? No, absolutely. So we started that. So I got the nice award from the college back in the summertime. So it just came in. So as I tell the if people start in the broadcast business or whatever, Dean, if you don't promote yourself, no one else will. So
that's right.
There you go.
Even when you have a promotions department, sometimes as we've all worked at some of those small stations, you are definitely on your own. And it's funny about broadcasting now. Like we're doing this, and I was thinking about my 25 years in broadcasting, from straight TV to radio to live events to streaming. You really cover it all. And now, it's awesome when you can work for a station, but you can start your own. And if you're good enough, people are going to watch you. And that's basically what it is. If you know what you're talking about and you can get out there, people are going to watch you and you can give them the information.
That's it, man. That's it. So, yeah, it was very, very nice. And it was a nice ceremony. So I thought, you know what, pop that up there. So, no, very, very good. But, Dean, I'm telling you, man, the hashtag Ask Andy on social media, at AndyMC81 on Twitter, Instagram, AndyMC Sports, has been off the charts. There's been quarterback questions. There's been running back questions. It's been all over the place. There is so many questions to get to. And we're only in week 3 of the NFL season.
I love it. First of all, before we get to those questions, though, we have to acknowledge some great performances. The top performers from Week 3 in the Ultimate College Fantasy Football League. And CJ Stroud, a guy Jamie and I were talking about yesterday on this show. It's the thing that he said, this guy is quarterback 1 coming into the 2023 draft. And here you have his big performance on the weekend.
Yeah, I think so. And what's so funny? It wasn't that long ago, CJ Stroud with the Buckeyes, because Ohio State's obviously one of the best football programs out there, most popular, most well-known. And they've had a string of great players, but usually that's been on the wide receiver side and certainly on the cornerback side, on the defensive side. But the quarterback side, when it comes to translating to the NFL, not as great in recent years, right? So you've had, when CJ Stroud took over, I believe it was his first game, Dean, he had a dud. And people are like, yeah, no, he's done. I was just like, look, the guy was just turned 19 years old or 18 years old, whatever it was. Give him a chance, and lo and behold, he has turned out to be a stud. And the key thing, that transition, as we know, to go from college to being a viable NFL quarterback is not just running the ball, is not just throwing up big stats. It's, do you have the arm talent? Do you have the accuracy? Do you have the IQ? And CJ Stroud has been one of the most successful, I think, in recent memory of quarterbacks who has progressed steadily throughout his collegiate career. And I'd be really surprised if he's not the first overall pick in next year's NFL draft.
All right, on the defensive side of things, what got it done for? I'm just trying to see the logos on the colleges are so incredible, and I think it's cool. It's like what we did with the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors, where you got to name your own country. So let's talk about the defensive line linebacker Will Anderson Jr. and his performance.
Oh man, well, Will Anderson Jr. was actually the first round pick in the Ultimate College Fantasy Football League draft by the co-owned team of our good friend, former Pro Bowl NFL defensive back Walt Harris, and Jake Wimberly, who's an ESPN radio host down from Mississippi State in the U.S. So they co-own that team. That was their first pick. And Dean, sometimes first overall pick or first round picks don't pan out. In this case, Will Anderson. While people went quarterback, they went Will Anderson. Look at those fantasy points. What an absolute stud. He was just sensational. He's been great all year long. Of course, Kahuna University Kings there is been doing a great job also. Just the logos are so cool. And what's so great about the college side, Dean, is where on the NFL side, you certainly have your surprises. Like we'll get to Tua from week 2. Certainly a bit of a surprise for a top performer. But in college, when it comes to just D1, you have over 130 schools. So you can have a new star every single week. So I've really enjoyed watching over this first part of the season just who are some of these names that pop up. Some of them are guys who might not be as well known, and others are very well known, like Stroud and Anderson.
Yes, almost 60-point outing is pretty good. Plus 60-point outing in fantasy is even better, and that's what Tua did. I mean, 6 touchdowns. I was the benefactor with Tyreek Hill in one of my leagues, so I was really happy about it. And, the Silverbacks loving that. And on the other side, the Hydra loving what they're getting out of Aiden Hutchinson on the defensive end side.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's start with Tua. And is Tua, people saying, oh, Tyreek Hill was right. He's better than Patrick Mahomes. Let's settle down. Okay. Let's take a step back. Great game. Great game for Tua. Great for the Silverbacks to really push them along and have a great outing. Like, it was an epic performance by Tua. Everything went right. It helped the Silverbacks get to 2-0. And unsurprisingly, Aiden Hutchinson, rookie for the Hydra and in the NFL, helped push them to a 2-0 record in the Ultimate Fantasy American Football League. So both of these studs balled out and helped their respective clubs. But yeah, Tua was just all over the place. Again, I would caution if you're in redraft or DFS leagues to hold Tua to that standard, because next up is the Buffalo Bills, and I don't know if any of you have been watching them, but they're pretty damn good. So maybe hold off a little. But Hutchinson, I hope with him that this is his breakout game to continue, because he was one of the more exciting players to watch coming out of the draft on the defensive side of the ball.
Oh, no kidding. And the matchups that I look at this week, and it's funny, we had Mooch on last Friday, and I'm like, yeah, not a great weekend for Tom Brady. He's like, well, you know what this league is. You don't have a choice. You just got to you take your lumps. I told you Tom Brady was going to disappoint at some point. And I said Jimmy G was going to come in and be a factor. I didn't think it was going to happen so early. But in this league, when your quarterback has a bad matchup, because there's 32 teams, there's not as many options like every other league where you could just go find, somebody like a Jimmy G on the waiver wire or Carson Wentz or something like that.
No, you're right, and you're to your credit, Dean. Yeah, you called it. Jimmy G's going to do something. It was really quick, really fast. that Jimmy G came in, and Tom Brady, slow start to the year. Now he's going to be without Mike Evans again this week. Brashad Perryman actually is one of my pickups if you need waiver wire, redraft normal leagues. You need waiver wire help and you're a bit desperate for a flex. I think Brashad Perryman could really pop this week. But you look at the matchups this week. As we're entering week 3, still some undefeated teams, of course, and we have 2 of them in the Manning Conference West. In the West Manning Conference, we have Hydra versus Hammerheads, both 2-0. So that'll be a nice interdivisional matchup right there, and really be able to see how these teams start to separate themselves as we enter or get closer to that quarter point of the season.
Yeah, and it's fantasy football, to me, it's so funny. You look at it and you're like, hey, I'm winning the first part of the season. That's great. Can you win when bye weeks start happening and you really have to make decisions? I mean, it's like the CFL. We always say doesn't really start until after Labor Day. Fantasy football, to me, doesn't start until the bye weeks, and the real tough decisions then come into play.
Definitely, D. Definitely. 100%. When that happens, as well as the injuries, and the injuries have been enough so far already. But yeah, when the bye weeks come, okay. Do you have a backup for that quarterback? Are you just taking the hit there when it comes to the UFAFL? Because you said it, where just like real NFL teams, if your starting quarterback goes out, you're not getting another starting quarterback likely. You're Dallas, you get Cooper Rush, who's looked okay actually. I'm not sure actually who in the UFAFL has Cooper Rush, but actually he's looked pretty good. And then you go to San Francisco, who really put themselves in a great situation to bring back Jimmy Garoppolo, despite their best efforts to trade him. They didn't want him. Jimmy G's in, and now Garoppolo has a perfect opportunity to come in, play well, stay healthy. That's his top priority, and try to get a big fat contract somewhere else next year.
100%. That's exactly what I think. Exactly what the goal is for him. And I don't know. There's been a lot of questions to coaches. I mean, from play calls to, we look at the week one with Russell Wilson and all that stuff. I don't know if I remember another season where there's been as many coaches being questioned. But questions is why we are here, Andy. People have questions for you. Ask Andy is the hashtag that we are asking people to use on social media. So do you have a few questions that people are throwing at you? I'll look on social media as well. But if you have a few lined up, why don't you go with your first one?
Oh, yeah, man. And I love the questions on Twitter at AndyMC81, hashtag Ask Andy. Also, a few trade questions. So, I'll put this out to the group, too. I got this one from at BSportsGames1. Says, do I make this trade? I receive Waddle, Zeke, and Freiermuth. He gets Aaron Jones, Jacoby Myers, and Albert O, the tight end. I have McCaffrey as my other back, but don't have a top-tier receiver, so that is why I'm trying to get one. I love that deal for at BSportsGames1. Namely because, you lose the best back in it with Aaron Jones. But Jacoby Myers, nice start to the year for Jacoby Myers. I'm not trusting that Patriots offense, not by a long shot. It still seems like a mess, and they're kind of hodgepodging it together. So get rid of Jacoby Myers. Albert O, all right, nice tight end. I'm not against it when it comes to because the tight end group is so thin, but you get Freiermuth back, and he's been proving to stay busy, stay involved with that offense, even with Mitchell Trubisky. And you got Waddle, who, we saw like everybody else in Miami, balled out, and it looks like there should be enough ball for Waddle and Hill. Really, I think we'll get a bit of a dose of reality, so I wouldn't get too, overly bullish on Miami's offense, especially against the Buffalo Bills, but I think that deal makes a lot of sense.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. Here's the fantasy questions I had going into week 3 for everybody. And are your fantasy Dolphins for real was the number one, because as the Dolphins would get tested against New England every year, now it's the Bills. And this is where you can find out and not one game. You're not going to be like, okay, they suck if they don't do it. But if he passes the test, you can really start believing a lot more, I think. And that's one of the things that we are going to get answered with, or going to get at the answer to this weekend, or some of the answers, maybe not all of the answers, but we might get a really good look into the future of the Miami Dolphins, or we might be like, hey, it's the same old story, Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown for Dolphins fans, and they're not a division contender. This game is not going to decide it, but it's going to go a long way to us realizing, can you really invest in Miami Dolphins in fantasy?
Yeah, for sure. And it's a tough test. Even if they don't have a great week against the Buffalo Bills, doesn't mean the sky is totally falling. But from a fantasy side, I hope that there is enough ball for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, because they're both great players. You're paying Hill a ton of cash, and Waddle is to his guy. So I think maybe the odd man out is Mike Gesicki, the tight end, and that running back situation is a bit of a schmoz back there. Got another question in from at Joey Wheeler 85, hashtag Ask Andy, says, I got to start, it goes back to our Tom Brady comment here. I have to start either Tom Brady or Kirk Cousins. What a world we live in, Dean, where we have to ask this question. Tom Brady or Cousins? Which one is best to move forward with for this week? Hashtag Ask Andy. And look, here's what we have to realize. If Kirk Cousins is playing in any sort of individual primetime game, he just can't do it. He can't do it. He's 2-10. He buckles under whatever, fluke or whatever the case is. It doesn't work out well. The good news is he's playing the Detroit Lions at 1 o'clock on a Sunday. A nice mashed in the middle, lost in the crowd game. It's perfect. That's why I'm saying if we're looking Tom Brady versus the Packers, even though it's at home, with all the weapons injured in and out of the lineup and Brady not popping really yet this year, I'm going to say Kirk Cousins, Dean, because, he got blown up real good by Darius Slay and the Eagles. But that was prime time. Week 1, he got you 19 fantasy points. You're playing the Lions, who are a tougher out than I think people have realized, and can maybe sling the ball a little bit to guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and force you into a bit of a shootout, which is great for all fantasy players. So I'm saying Kirk Cousins over Tom Brady. Words, Dean, I never thought would come out of my mouth.
Well, and the other thing is Tom Brady doesn't have his number one weapon in Mike Evans because he was stupidly I don't know what Mike Evans was thinking. Like after the game, he's like, I don't think I'll get suspended. I did way worse in 2017. Yeah, but you got suspended then, so you're a repeat offender. This was an easy decision for the NFL and just another tough break for Bucs fantasy players. By the way, Cooper Rush is a member of Big Boy Hydra, says everybody's favorite butthead Phil Beavis. So thank you, Phil, for chiming in and for, of course, watching. And you know what? I love Beavis's passion in the baseball league. He is like he is taking Shohei Ohtani. It's his ride or die for MVP. So I love the passion with Phil in that one. Phil. He is a member of Hydra, who we just talked about, and who knows what happens. Okay, what else do we got for some Ask Andy? I know I have some on Twitter, but I'll let you throw one in there if you got one.
Okay, for sure. Yeah, and Hydra, like I said earlier, undefeated battle interdivision against Hammerhead. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see what Cooper Rush can do. I think that'll be, maybe he's going to be able to be more serviceable than we thought. Let me see. We got another.
Well, I got one here. This is another trade one, but this is weird. Okay. It's in a family league, and I advise everybody, do not mix family and fantasy. It's probably not going to go well. But this guy says, I get Edmonds from Miami. My nephew gets Everett for the Rams. And then he countered with Edmonds from Miami and Williams from the Chargers. And Everett, the nephew, gets Everett from the Rams and Harris from New England. So my only advice, fantasy and family, it could lead to some really hurt feelings.
That's right. Over Thanksgiving or Christmas holidays, whatever it might be. Yeah, I like that deal with the one where he gets Williams in it.
Mike Williams and Edmonds. Yeah.
And Edmonds. And again, am I in love with Chase Edmonds? No. But I'm not going to trust the New England offense. I'm just not going to do it. I think it's way too volatile and way too uncertain. So I think you get that deal. Mike Williams, again, Keenan Allen, still not 100%. And while he is a roller coaster, you are going to get those spike games. So I'd rather go with that. I got one in here from at Ben Naxon, says hashtag Ask Andy. I went heavy wide receiver in my drafts. Now I need a running back. I got offered James Robinson for Terry McLaurin in PPR. Think I should take it. I have Kupp, Evans, and Michael Thomas. My running backs are Zeke and Pollard, Hunt, Akers, and Henderson. Dean, when I'm looking at that, I say yes, you take it because of the wide receiver depth that you have and the thin the running back class can be when it comes to producers. Now, do we expect Travis Etienne to continue to work his way back from injury and into the Jacksonville line? I would think so, but James Robinson is out touching him. He's getting goal line stuff right now. So I think that you chance that right now. Take Robinson. You can give up Terry McLaurin, who really, when you look at with Washington, I love what Carson Wentz is doing. Carson Wentz, by the way, folks, has gotten you over 28 fantasy points 2 weeks in a row, 2 times.
Yeah, I know.
2 times.
It's been pretty impressive.
Antonio Gibson, you're spreading the ball around. So I make that deal. I take Robinson for McLaurin, slide him in. With that running back group, you need an upgrade because right now you have Zeke as a borderline RB1, probably higher RB2. Pollard's lurking in there. Love Kareem Hunt, but he's still an RB2. Akers and Henderson, that's just I don't even know what you make of that right now with Henderson kind of as the lead guy, but Akers getting more work, but neither being too effective. So you need somebody who's going to get the football, even if it's in the short term, while you sort that other situation out. So I think you make the deal for Robinson.
How about this Ask Andy? My wide receivers are Valdez-Scantling, Anderson, Pittman Jr., Lockett, and Gallup. I have to drop one to bring Gallup back from IR. Valdez-Scantling seems to be the logical choice after the last 2 weeks, but dropping a Chiefs wide receiver seems illogical. Your take. Sometimes it is hard to say, should I drop a guy from Andy Reid's offense? But in this case, when you look at those numbers, it does seem like the odd man out.
Yeah, you got to do it. You got to do it because for Valdez-Scantling, he's, again, I use the word volatile. It's too up and down. You can't look at somebody's overall fantasy production. You have to look game by game. Like Will Fuller's a perfect example from a couple years ago. His overall numbers, he was a WR2, but he got all those points in like 3 weeks, 3 different weeks, and then he did nothing. So for MVS, you're looking at an offense where he might be the guy, he might not be the guy. He could do something. He probably won't. Way too inconsistent. So out of that group, I say you drop it. Even though Geno Smith came back down to earth a little bit, didn't he? All these Geno truthers running out to get Geno Smith. Yeah, he got brought right back down. I was thinking maybe it would be Lockett, but I think Lockett at least has a more consistent target share than MVS would at this point.
All right, Phil Beavis throws in the question in the Twitch chat: which 0-2 team makes the playoffs in the NFL? I would say Raiders because I'm a Raiders fan, but Kyler Murray, listen, if there were bonus points for how pretty touchdowns were, the Raiders would have lost by a lot more than they did in overtime because Kyler Murray was really pretty running the ball. But maybe the Bengals turn it around. Joe Burrows is off social media now, so maybe he gets it together. But is there an 0-2 team that you think could make the playoffs right now?
It's close between the Bengals and the Raiders. The AFC West might sort of cannibalize itself a little bit. I just think the Bengals, Dean, I know the Super Bowl curse, and you can't necessarily put a definitive why on it, especially for the team that lost the Super Bowl. But this Bengals team upgraded. It's not like they're an old veteran team. They're young. They're here. They have the pieces. They're relatively healthy, the O-line. I think that AFC North division can still be had, and you're going to have to win that division. I don't think you get a wild card out of the AFC North this year. I think you get one, maybe two, out of the AFC West. So the Bengals, if they're going to – it's getting late early, as the old cliche goes. So I think you got to get moving on it. But I would say if I'm going to pick an 0-2 team, Cincinnati gives me the most hope to do that because, again, all the pieces are there. On paper, there's no reason why the Cincinnati Bengals should not win that division.
There we go. Okay, so obviously we have Thursday Night Football and then the big day on Sunday, and you are here on Twitch Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern, right here, twitch.tv/Ultimate Fantasy Sports. So people can get those questions in, those last-minute lineup decisions, and tell me about the Danger Zone picks. What's the Danger Zone picks?
Ooh. I love the Danger Zone picks, Dean. So Danger Zone is pretty much like your super bold prediction. We get dangerous on Sundays before the game. You're getting a little hungry. It's lunchtime's approaching. You're getting hungry. You're getting ready for football. So you get dangerous at the end. So Danger Zone picks. So you pick something. It's not like, Patrick Mahomes will throw for 300 yards and get a touchdown. That's not dangerous at all. My Danger Zone pick is something like Scotty Miller is going to ball out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, get a touchdown, and hit double-digit fantasy points. Probably not going to happen. But it might, and you give your reasoning why. So we love getting those on social media and in the Twitch chat as well. Just do it, the hashtag Danger Zone. And yeah, man, 11 to 12, it's the prime time slot for your fantasy football owners and teams because that's right in that hour. So when those final injuries come out, and that's when you need to make those last-second decisions. So, 11 to 12 on Sunday right here on Twitch.
I love it. Helps me fill out my lineup and ball out to a fantasy victory. Thanks so much, man. I can't wait to see you on Sunday morning and enjoy the rest of the weekend. I don't know. What do you think about Thursday night? Are you confident without Jadavian Clowney?
Still bitter from that Jets loss, Dean.
Still bitter.
Still pretty.
What did you think about Nick Chubb? This is interesting. Nick Chubb said, "I cost the team the win by running in the touchdown." So he helped fantasy owners and hurt his real team. Usually it's the other way around, right? Where the guy stops at the goal line and he hurts his fantasy team. The opposite happened.
3 touchdowns for Nick Chubb. We don't deserve Nick Chubb. We don't deserve Nick Chubb, the man and the person and the humbleness. He is a throwback to a forgotten era. Humble, workhorse. Listen, you scored 3 touchdowns. You're up by 2 touchdowns with 2 minutes left to play. You win that ball game. It happened, whatever the stat was, in 2,200 something games before that, the team's always won. That is a colossal collapse that only my Cleveland Browns can make. I don't blame Nick Chubb for a second. He wasn't told to do it by the coach. He went in and got a touchdown. You're taught to score. You scored, the defense collapsed, and it was bad play calling, and it was just a disaster. I don't blame Nick Chubb one bit, and I hope he goes off on the Steelers. Jadavian Clowney is not playing. Apparently, latest reports I saw about a half hour ago, Myles Garrett is expected to play. He had a neck issue, as well as right tackle. Jack Conklin is expected to play, making his first start of the year for the Browns on that offensive line, which is really good already.
Beautiful stuff, my man. Thank you so much. Enjoy the game tomorrow night, and we'll talk soon.
All right, buddy. Talk to you later.
You bet. There's Andy McNamara, who is on the air right here on twitch.tv/Ultimate Fantasy Sports, 11 a.m. Eastern, Sunday morning. You need your final fantasy fix? Ask Andy on Sundays. Get those Danger Zone picks in as well. So what do you think, Beavis? What 0-2 team do you think makes the playoffs? Maybe we'll throw that in to fill in the blanks in some form when we come back. Still to come, Tom Gazzola from the TSN 1260 post and pregame show. Training camps are underway. News out of Edmonton, possibly. Slater Cuckoo not in camp. We'll tell you why when we talk with Tom. We'll also preview the Montreal Canadiens today in our Dobber hockey team previews. Interesting team, the Canadiens. Lots of interesting changes. Not sure there's going to be a massive amount of fantasy value there, but we'll see. A guy like Brendan Gallagher always fills out categories. Is he going to be able to do that as much now? There's a new captain in town as well. All right, all of that still to come on the program. Fill in the blanks and much more. We're back right after this. It is 9 minutes before 5 p.m. on the eastern part of our country. And in Alberta, where I'm located, it is just before 3 o'clock when Tom Gazzola will join us here on the show. I think so, unless anything has changed at where Tom is, which is likely Rogers Place, where the Oilers are getting set to kick camp off. So Tom Gazzola is going to join us at the top of the hour. We will have a preview of the Montreal Canadiens still to come on our Dobber Hockey NHL preview. By the way, tomorrow is a big, big day for hockey fans. Michael Amato from Dobber Hockey will make his Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily debut. He'll join us every Thursday at 5:20 to get you ready for the weekend. In this case, ready for the season. We'll take a look at some forwards tomorrow. We'll also preview the Western Hockey League with Guy Flaming from the Pipeline Show and the color analyst for the Edmonton Oil Kings. And Marty Murray, a man I consider a good friend, a guy I loved watching as a kid play hockey, and is now the new GM of the Brandon Wheat Kings. So big hockey-focused show tomorrow. Of course, we'll get you set up for the Thursday nighter, the Browns and the Steelers. And we'll continue to follow Aaron Judge and Albert Pujols chasing history. So all of that's to come tomorrow. But right now, let's fill in the blank. And this is kind of, Beavis asked this question in our chat. How many 0-2 NFL teams will make the playoffs? So I'm asking how many 1-1 teams will make the playoffs. So I'll just go through them. Patriots, no. Jets, no. Steelers, I'll say no. Baltimore, yes. Cleveland, no. Jacksonville, that's a bad division. Yes. Chargers, yes. Broncos, yes. Commanders, no. Cowboys, no. Vikings, yes. Packers, yes. Lions, no. Bears, no. Saints, no. 49ers, yes. Rams, yes. Seahawks, no. Cardinals, no. There you go. There's my 1-1 teams that will make the playoffs. I don't know how many that was. But chime in on the Twitch message board, if you will, or hit me up on Twitter at Duck Millard or at UFSN if you would like on Twitter. Also, this other fill in the blank for fantasy that we just leave as usual. If you don't blank, then are you really into fantasy or are you just having fun? If you don't have your own logo, like a really nice logo, then are you really into fantasy or are you just having fun? Now, normally there'd be my logo over the top of my shoulder, but we're remodeling the marsh still, so we're not putting the jerseys up yet. But I think we have 3 logos for the 3 fantasy teams that I have in Ultimate Fantasy, Franchise Fantasy Sports. So if you don't blank, then are you really into fantasy or are you just having fun? And how many or blank 1-1 teams make the playoffs in the NFL? Those are the 2 questions that we are going with when it comes to the National Football League. So we left off talking about Aaron Judge. Let's continue with some football talk right now. And Joe Burrow is not on social media anymore. Joe Burrow has said, you know what? I'm done with social media. And this is probably the smartest thing Joe Burrow has ever done. There's not a chance if I was a professional athlete that I would be on social media. Are you kidding? No way. Why? The majority of people on social media, unfortunately, are jerks. And they're just looking to start a fight or be a jerk. That's what jerks do. So I'm surprised Joe Burrow was on social media. And if I was ever to be on, it would be so private that, I want people supporting me. Don't go on social media if that's what you're looking for. So this is probably the smartest decision he could have ever done, and maybe a reason why they'll be able to turn the season around. So I don't know. If you're tagging an athlete because they screwed up your fantasy football team, that's dumb. That's being a jerk. You can tag a guy and be supportive, but I don't know. The world of social media is one where people are not scared anymore. They think they can do whatever it is that they want without consequences. Freedom of speech is true, but not freedom of consequences, unfortunately. So when it comes to quarterbacks this weekend, the list, I think I have this graphic here. Yeah, for some reason, it didn't get loaded in. But when it comes to the quarterbacks throwing the best balls as far as 10-plus yards, it's pretty impressive. Question is, will this top 4 remain for the whole season? Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen. Now, Jalen Hurts might be the most surprising guy out of that list, but, you haven't watched Eagles, obviously. I have him in fantasy, so I do. And he's still a third-year guy. But when you look at the top quarterbacks, the quarterback ranking index put together by Mark Sessler at NFL.com, Josh Allen is number 1. Patrick Mahomes is number 2. Justin Herbert is number 3. Lamar Jackson is number 4. Tom Brady is number 5. You got to go down to number 9 before you get to Jalen Hurts. Now, he is not going to get into the top 5 in a week, but he moved up 3 spots this week, did Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts is probably the most under-talked about quarterback in fantasy. Now, that might change this week because he has been, him and Kyler Murray were just so electric on the weekend that it's going to be impossible for people to ignore them anymore. So, if in one end, you could go after Jalen Hurts right now. Maybe the team that has him in your league doesn't realize what they have. Maybe they're still not buying in. Or you can try to sell high if you have guys after you. Like you're paying through the roof for those other 3 guys in fantasy. Jalen Hurts, you might not have to. So it's worth looking around, in my opinion, in your league to see if this is a guy who is available. And man, if Jalen Hurts turns into a top 4 quarterback, gets into the top 5, be laughing wherever you drafted him this year. We talked about Jadavian Clowney with Andy. He is out for tomorrow versus Pittsburgh. It has to be Kenny Pickett time soon for Pittsburgh. Maybe even this week. And George Pickett is reminding everybody, including the Steelers quarterbacks, that he was open 90% of the time last week. Of course, a receiver's going to tell you that. They're always open. The quarterbacks just never see them. And that weird situation, Nick Chubb scoring a touchdown, says he cost his team a game, but would have helped fantasy owners. Usually it's the other way around. All right, when we come back, we're going to jump into some hockey talk with our good friend Tom Gazzola of TSN 1260, does the post-game show and also correspondent for NHL.com. That still to come in just a second. We'll get it all lined up and be back with you right away. righty, just after 5 p.m. Eastern, this is Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily on the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. We are going to talk some hockey now. We've spent a lot of time talking football, of course, as you would expect, with so much going on in the world of the NFL that rules it all. And remember, Andy McNamara, Sunday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern, Ask Andy, to get all of your fantasy needs met. But we're going to talk hockey right now as the construction in my building continues. The construction on all these rosters in the NHL continues. So I apologize if there's some drilling in the background. They're doing some work on our building. But Tom Gazzola of TSN 1260, the pre- and post-game show, and of course, NHL correspondent, joining me on the show today. And Tom, this is the time of year when, everybody is optimistic and, all these guys have an opportunity to play all these roles when, in a few weeks, the dust will be settled a little bit later. But everybody's excited right now. Every fan base, every rookie, every veteran trying to squeeze in one more year.
Yeah, Dino, the equipment doesn't stink yet. Nobody's lost a game yet. Everybody's happy. They still have a tan. This is a good time, but it doesn't last long in the National Hockey League, as we know. But yeah, optimism reigns supreme, and rightly so. But man, this is going to be an interesting year, as is every season in the National Hockey League. But here at Edmonton, obviously, people are super excited. Out east, I know people are wondering what the Toronto Maple Leafs did. You've got the New York Rangers that are an upstart team, and then we'll see what the Colorado Avalanche have in store in the Central Division. It's going to be another fun year of hockey as this game only gets faster and younger and more skilled. And bring it on. Buckle up, baby. I can't wait. We're at the rink today, Dino, and, things seem to fly a million miles an hour. But today, as you know, was hurry up and wait day, medicals and physicals. A lot of twiddling of the thumbs going on.
This day and garbage bag day are two of the longest days for reporters because you're just standing around doing a lot of nothing.
Yeah. At some point, you're just like, oh, my back hurts. Why does my back hurt? I've been standing for 4 hours. And I know that's an easy out, the cheap joke, but it's true. I mean, I'm sitting around. I'm like, oh, my back is getting kind of sore. And I'd have to go sit down. And it wasn't just me. It was the younger reporters, too, and all of them being like, boy, we've been sitting here for a long time not doing anything. And you're right, garbage bag days equally as tedious, but we got through it safely. And no backs were worse for wear today, at least here at Edmonton. I know other markets may be a bit of a different story. I don't know yet. We'll get the injury report media-wise tomorrow, but let's go. This is going to be fun.
No doubt. So here's an example. I thought this was hilarious. This is how old we are and how young, and you're much younger than me, but how young the players of the game are. You talked about old and young. Here's a video, you might have already seen this, from New York Rangers camp with Alexis Lafreniere. I'll play it. There.
Is that right?
Can we see her now?
Thank you. No, you gotta wait till they develop them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like, this guy has never seen a camera that you can't immediately look at the picture of, and he was looking on the back of that, whatever disposable camera. That's our new segment. We are old. When you got a guy like Alexis Lafreniere has never ever seen a camera like that. Like, the ones you get at weddings.
Yeah. The old disposable, right? The cheap flash, and they would come in like a pack of 4 at Costco.
Yeah.
Yeah, old school, man. I remember those days. I remember taking disposable cameras on my trip to Mexico, my first ever trip to Mexico. And that was right when digital cameras were becoming a thing. Now digital cameras, unless you're a pro photographer, like nobody knows or uses a digital camera anymore, and everything's done on your phone. So I had this same kind of aha moment when we were talking about the Oilers Hall of Fame inductees, talk about Ryan Smith and people throwing out names from the past. And like, you hear the younger generations being like, Ales Hemsky has to be one of the first guys to go into the Edmonton Oilers Hall of Fame. I'm like, Ales Hemsky? What do you guys, do you remember Doug Waite? Do you guys remember any of these great players from like the 2000s? Jason Smith, and you say those names and they just kind of like blank stare and look at you, and you're like, oh my goodness, what the heck is going on? We're getting older, Dino. We're getting older. That's what's going on.
Yeah, and you know, when a guy like Zdeno Chara is calling it quits, and you look at like we go to the opposite now. This is a guy who I think I have a graphic here of Zdeno Chara. Yeah, so Zdeno Chara, like, this is wild. He becomes one of the 2 men in the NHL to score a goal before turning 22 and after 45, joining Gordie Howe and Jaromir Jagr. So only 3 guys. So as we look to the youth of the league, we're saying goodbye to 3 legends. Well, 1 legend in Chara for sure, and then PK Subban and Keith Yandel. To me, he's the one Hall of Famer out of those 3. But that's the opposite side of the spectrum of now the players we're covering are getting old.
Thanks for that. You're right. Zdeno Chara and Joe Thornton, I guess, is the last guy left that's still active that played in the 90s in the National Hockey League, because we had Roberto Luongo retire, we had Chara, we had Patrick Marleau retire, and yeah, we're turning over to the next generation where we're talking about guys that are born in the 2000s now that are coming into the National Hockey League. But Chara was a beast for a long time. Obviously, he played in PG, Prince George, in the Western League. That was a tough-as-nails guy. I respect him because, not only was he a champion, he was an excellent defenseman, a number 1 defenseman in the National Hockey League for a long time, but he carried himself with some class and dignity and imparted a good example on the next wave of players. I remember seeing him and talking to him in Helsinki, Finland, of all places, Dino, during the 2012 World Hockey Championships. And I was like, hey, Zdeno, you got time for Oilers TV? He's like, what the hell are you guys doing here? I'm like, long story, but a bunch of the Oilers are in this division in Helsinki, but we just want to spread it out. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever, sure. And gave a great interview, and that's something you can appreciate. And that's something, Dean, actually, speaking of like the attitude and demeanor of players, I'd like to see more of, like, willingness to chat, being open in interviews, and giving you a little bit something to the fan, to the interviewer, asking, like, that old school mentality. You'd see interviews from like the 80s and 90s where guys would just say what was on their mind and not worry about the repercussions, because what they were saying generally was true, and they were given opinion on stuff. And I know they've been coached in recent years to be guys that don't give anything bulletin board material, but there's ways to be exciting and thoughtful and inquisitive and all of that in an interview. And you pointed to PK Subban. He was a guy that would do that. I know people would roll their eyes at him, and teammates would, but that kind of thing has become few and far between, where you can actually appreciate guys who open up a little bit. So one guy who does that nowadays that might be a good player to pick up in your fantasy pool, Trevor Zegras. There's one.
Yeah. No kidding. Like, that guy oozes just everything that the NHL should be after. Fun. Yep. Kids love him, and the next generation of kids will absolutely love him. So I agree that then the NHL needs more marketing of those types of things and less of torts saying it's bad for the game. Like, it's just like, can you imagine what Philadelphia is going to be like this year? No Couturier. They just Ellis is not going to be ready yet.
Yep.
I just can't imagine how much of a gong show that is going to be. And it's Philadelphia. You've been there. It's not exactly the most forgiving city.
No, it isn't. Poor Katahat is going to have a tough go. And the kid from Sherwood Park, I mean, they're going to heap a lot of pressure on him. And I was thinking about this the other day. It just popped into my head. I'm like, I wonder how Carter Hart's going to do in Philly. And I don't think it's lining up well for him. And that's due to the fact that, like you said, no Couturier, one of the best two-way players in the game right now. Looks like he's on the shelf for a while. Ryan Ellis, nobody knows what his timeline is like. John Tortorella, someone throwing him another lifeline, thinking he could turn that team around. I'm not a huge John Tortorella fan. I know he is effective to a certain extent, and I know there are some players that really appreciate his style of coaching. And I just, we would see him on ESPN last year, and I know he was trying to make waves, but he wasn't too different from his time on TSN and his time when he was in Vancouver, even when he got all crudgy and angry in Columbus. It's just like, come on, man. Like, everyone else is evolving. Older coaches of his ilk have evolved as well. Like, get with it. And from an outsider's point of view, yeah, Philly's going to have a tough year. Those fans know their hockey, and I don't know if John Tortorella is the right answer there. And some of the stuff I've read and seen out of there so far already, I'm just like, oh, good luck. It's going to be a rough year.
Yeah, he's already saying they have problems in the room. It's really bizarre. It's interesting. Jacob Chychrun said today that he did take the Coyotes up on trying to be traded so he could play for a contending team. Hopes that happens again. This is a really good defenseman, and I know there's Oiler fans immediately say, hey, let's trade Puljujarvi and this and that. It's just obviously not that easy, but Jacob Chychrun is a trade chip that the Arizona Coyotes can use because he obviously wants to get traded and should use and add to their stable of picks. But where do you think the Ottawa Senators keep coming up? But they did sign someone the other day. I wonder where Jacob Chychrun ends up, and do you think the Oilers could pull off a trade like this?
I'll start with the Oilers one. As much as fans here would probably love it, I don't think it's realistic at all. And Jesse Puljujarvi being the centerpiece of a move going back the other way is far-fetched to think that could be the case, because Puljujarvi's value, as we're witnessing right now, isn't very high. He's not a guy that garners a ton of demand. And, I think, roughly 28 other teams in the National Hockey League said thanks, but no thanks, Edmonton. Chychrun is a great defenseman, or he's going to be a great defenseman. There's a lot of value there. And I know his contract is relatively reasonable considering the type of player he has become. But it almost feels, Dino, that with the National Hockey League and the cap being frozen because of COVID, and now the league's starting to finally come out of that, like guys that are in that little bit of a middle range in the National Hockey League and have those like $3 million to $5 million contracts, like there isn't room for them, and they're hard to move all of a sudden, because it's either you got your high end guys that are making top buck, and then you've got your lower end guys that are making minimum to just above minimum. And then there's so few and far between in that mid range. And it seems like those guys have been squeezed out. A lot of them were RFA, not guys that weren't qualified and are now on PTOs, like it's like that middle grouping of National Hockey League players who are very good players are just getting squeezed out. And this might be a result of Chychrun and where he's at contract-wise and how bad things are financially when it comes to the cap for at least a dozen teams that are over the cap to start right now. And I know we'll get cap compliant at some point, but like who could take on, what is he at, 4.5 mil, 5 mil, somewhere around there? Like who actually has enough room to take him on? And then the other thing is would he be willing to go to the teams that are able to squeeze him in under the cap, that do have the space? Given where he's at in his career and all the bad hockey teams he's played on, I don't think he wants to go to a team on the bottom end of the league unless there's some real upside and they're going to start winning games. So he might be stuck in a situation where he's waiting it out for a little bit. And Dino, this is a guy that has had his name out there for, a couple of years now, and there hasn't been any movement or progress.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just making the numbers match, right? The other team has to want those guys, and you're right. Jesse Puljujarvi is nowhere near being the centerpiece. You're going to have to add, a bunch more pieces. And I'm not saying Chychrun isn't worth it, but you're also going to have to convince Arizona to take on some dollars going the other way. Here's a question from Andrea. Says, Dean, I think you and Tom need to chat about Jesse Puljujarvi's video on Twitter of him singing while he was exercising in his home the next time Tom comes on. And so this is a guy that has always had oozes personality. I mean, he's a fun person to be around. He seems to get excited. For me, that just seems like that's who he is. I don't know what song. Maybe that was the Finnish goal song that they was singing along to. I'm not sure, but you've seen him more than a lot of other people because you were, behind the curtain with the Oilers for a while. This is a guy who, that just seems like what his personality is.
It is, and it's nice to get those moments. I mean, how many times after a Puljujärvi goal do we see the clip of him walking behind eating pizza in Detroit? Like, I remember doing that interview, and I was there, and I'm like, is he seriously walking in the shot with a piece of pizza in his mouth? The answer was yes. It's a meme now, and it's hilarious. But there is that side of Jesse Puljujärvi. He is the Bison King for a reason. He went and saw Elk Island Park and what the Bisons have to offer up close and personal. And so that element endears him, and that's what I liked about him. It's refreshing, and you see some personality and the big smile, and it looks like he's licking boogers when he's on the bench because his tongue goes to the tip of his nose, and he's got a helmet that looks like it's oversized. But there's also the other side of it. There's the player, the competitor, the guy that has a passion to have success, and that's personally and as a team as well. And that element isn't going so well right now, and did not end well last season. And I did have a chance. I've told the story here and there, but Dino, you're right. Like, I worked for the team. I hosted Oilers TV, but you're on the inside, and so you get to know the players because you're around them on the plane and stuff like that. And I got to know Jesse, and I like him. He's a good guy. He's a good hockey player. It clearly isn't working right now. It's a time of frustration on the ice for him. But I remember watching the NBA Finals when the Raptors were in it, and I literally wound up sitting beside Jesse watching, I think, Game 5 or 6, because we had mutual friends, and we were at their restaurant. And so at halftime, I just looked, and we started chatting, and I said, "How you doing? How are your hips?" He's like, "I'm better. I'm skating." And he's like, he was asking me how things were going, transitioning from the Oilers to TSN. I'm like, well, it's good. It's refreshing. I feel welcome as opposed to, how things were going before at the Oilers. And he's like, that's good. We like you. And I'm like, I like you too. It's great. So we had that conversation. And then I go, well, what are you going to do? Because I'm hearing like you're frustrated and stuff. And he said to me, and this is a couple of years ago, granted, he just said, Dino, he's like, I need a fresh start, new team, new city, just a fresh start. And I said, well, you have a new GM, you have a new coach coming in. Isn't that a fresh start? He's like, no, just something new. And obviously his English, isn't as good as, or wasn't as good as it is today, but he was willing to say fresh start. I want to try something new and go with another team. And he wound up going to Finland, and then, Ken Holland came in and they bridged the gap and brought him back. But everything I've heard now sounds like he's kind of gotten back to that thinking that if there's an opportunity that presents himself somewhere else, he'd be willing to take it. And the team, seems like it's willing to oblige. Now, could they make it work again? Yeah, absolutely. But Jesse does like the city. He appreciates the fans. And I'm not slighting the city, but he just, you get in that mindset where you need something new. You need to move on. And back then, at least, that's how he felt. And you get the indicators that maybe he's okay with that again a few years later.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately what is going to happen, and probably best for everybody. All right, Tom, the race has begun with physical day is over, and now everybody tries to come up with the best stories that have never been told. Enjoy the season. It'll be great listening to you on the pre- and post-game show on TSN 1260 and on NHL.com as well, and we'll see you at the rink.
Dino, look forward to it. Thanks, buddy.
You betcha. There is Tom Gazzola. Check him out on TSN 1260. I'm guessing Tom is much better with dealing with the callers than I was. At some point, you just were like, wow, I can't answer the same question about the power play 50 times. But anyway, it's a fun show. It is a fun show, and it's more fun when they're winning. Well, actually, that's not true. That show is more fun when they're losing because people lose their minds. When they're winning, people don't call in or chime in as much, so it's a weird situation. But it's always better when the Oilers are in the playoffs. I think obviously they will again this year, and Tom will have a lot of fun to chat about on the pre- and post-game show. And yeah, that's Jesse Puljujärvi's personality. I like the guy. I think he's going to be a good hockey player. Whether it's in Edmonton this year or not, I highly doubt it will be by the end of the season. in Edmonton. All right, still to come on the program, we're going to check out our Dobber Hockey Montreal Canadiens preview. The Habs made some big moves in the offseason. Will they pay off for your fantasy team? This is Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. .24 Eastern Time, 3:24 in the Alberta time zone, Mountain Time Zone. My name is Dean Millard. This is Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today and every day as you have joined us here on Twitch. Do apologize for some of the internet problems we're having. I noticed the lip sync was off a little bit on a couple of interviews today, so I do apologize for that. Obviously, try to bring as much quality programming, and I can't stand it when the lip sync is off, so if you're annoyed, just know I'm annoyed even more. So apologize for that. We will try to get that sorted out as we go. One thing that we didn't get to today, Robert Sarver is going to sell the Mercury and Suns, the Phoenix Suns and Phoenix Mercury, NBA and WNBA franchises. He said today he's looking for a buyer. So that's good. That is something good to come out of a bad situation where it was a hostile workplace and there was some obviously very questionable tactics being used. This is what I've said from the outset of this story, is that your fantasy players are going to be have a better owner. They're going to be happier and they're going to be better. That's what happened with the Clippers. That's my thought on that particular story. But right now, we are going to get to our Dobber hockey team preview. And today it is the Montreal Canadiens. What do you think of the Canadiens and their off-season moves? Pretty awesome. But will they be enough to contend this year? No. That's the easy and fast answer for you. We'll tell you why as we go along. But anyway, you look at their top three fantasy stars as we like to look at them. And wasn't that hard when you're looking at this team? Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, and Mike Hoffman. 3 forwards because I'm not that crazy about this blue line right now. The guy I think that's going to break out is Kirby Dach. who they picked up in the trade with Chicago. And the sleeper's Jonathan Drouin. And you might be like, how can you pick a guy who's a sleeper and he's on the top line? Because Jonathan Drouin has not produced like he should have, like has been expected. Now, I also think Jonathan Drouin is going to have some pretty good line mates to go this year. Like Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. I think Jonathan Drouin should be getting more than 44 points on that line. And that's why if you're thinking Jonathan Drouin is only getting 44 points, I think he's going to get like in the 60s with these guys. So that's why I put him as my sleeper. Kirby Doc, this lineup has him on the third line. Probably not a bad place to start where you can shelter him a little bit. You give him a guy like Sean Monahan who is really, really responsibly defensively to help out. Mike Hoffman is also a guy who's going to produce at least 20 goals, I think. Brendan Gallagher's point production is dropping off, but he is a player that will fill out multi-categories in fantasy. So Brendan Gallagher, still, I think, a valuable, especially if he's getting second-line minutes in Montreal. I don't know what they're going to do with the power play. Now, the guy that I don't have in my roster for the Montreal Canadiens is Juraj Slafkovsky. And the Canadiens, and Dobber Hockey even has him here at 9 games. Because I think he's going to play the rest of the time in Laval. He might be up and down a little bit. But I don't think Juraj Slafkovsky will crack the Canadiens roster this season, other than a 9-game stint. And I mentioned the blue line. I guess the goals are going to have to come from somewhere. So Mike Matheson is a decent byproduct of average blue line. 40 point, but 10 goals. So especially if you're in a league that rewards goals more than assists. I like Joel Edmondson because he fills out a bunch of categories as well. And, you know, still might be, I think that point total could be low. And Jordan Harris, still a young player. So obviously, a decent forward cast, questionable defense, and certainly questionable goaltending. Is Jake Allen a number 1 goalie? I guess you're going to find out with no Carey Price again. And the answer, I think, is no. So the Canadiens are one of those teams that are not going to be a good, you know, yesterday we talked about the Minnesota Wild, and we said the Minnesota Wild are not going to be a good fantasy team, but will be a good NHL team. I think it's the opposite. I think the Montreal Canadiens have some fantasy pieces, but they're not going to be a good NHL team. Now, they are, and I don't even think they have as many fantasy pieces as the Wild, so they're not great, but this is a team you should be targeting and looking at when it comes to a dynasty league. Doc, Slafkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki. If you're trying to rebuild on the fly, this is a good young team to try to do it if these guys are available in your draft. So that's a look at the Montreal Canadiens from Dobber Hockey. Feel free to chime in. Give me your thoughts on what you think the Canadiens will be like this season. And whether or not you think there is some fantasy value. All right, so in case you missed it last segment with Tom Gazzola, here's something new calling This Is How Old We Are. This is Alex Lafreniere at Rangers camp looking at a disposable camera.
Is that right?
Let me see or no?
Thank you. No, you gotta wait till they develop them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so good. Like, looks,
Let me see
where's
or
the
no?
picture?
No, you gotta wait till they develop them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that is rich. That's a new segment. That shows how old we are. Like, used to take those on vacation, or you get them at weddings and you take a bunch of pictures and then you got to wait until it develops. Like, that's the era I grew up where you had to wait and get stuff developed. So some funny stuff from New York Ranger camp. And once again, this from New York Ranger land, or New York Yankee land last night. that got a rally going for the Yankees and puts Aaron Judge on level playing field with the Babe.
Three infielders on the left side for Judge, and here's the 3-1. Drilled deep to left field. There it goes. Number 60. Slide over, Babe. You've got some company. Aaron James Judge has tied George Herman Babe Ruth with 60 home runs.
It is 4:40, or 5:40 rather, in the Eastern Time Zone. This is Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily on Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network. And we're just going to wrap up the show in this final segment. We will get to some of your questions if you have them. Take a look at the projections for week number 3. And we'll dive back into some baseball news as well. But we talked about Aaron Judge before we went to break. This is our poll question, or our question of the day. Are you more intrigued by Judge or Pujols chasing history? Aaron Judge or Albert Pujols? What are you more intrigued by when it comes to these two guys and their chase for history? Judge obviously trying to hit at least 62 home runs, break the record of Roger Maris set in 1961, and Albert Pujols is trying to get to 700 home runs, which I think only 3 people have done. Let me just check. Because he just passed A-Rod for 4th. So, yeah, Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron, and Babe Ruth, and Albert Pujols at 698. So if you had to choose who gets what record, what would you choose? I'd have to give Pujols because he's retiring and Judge is coming back. So I would give Pujols if I had to choose which one. So this is Aaron Judge, once again, after last night with 60 home runs and where he sits among history's greatest. 61 and 61 for Maris. That is the record in the American League. And then you get into 1999 to 2001, where the PEDs were flowing. They were making it rain with PEDs. But Judge is making his case, and he has now won me over for MVP because he is now in rarefied air as far as Triple Crown. He's the first Yankee since Mickey Mantle won the Triple Crown in 1956 to lead all 3 categories this late in September. And he is right now on track to have the highest OPS ever in September. That's why he is back on track. Like, he had such an incredible, he had 36 home runs in the first 3 months of the season. And then, like the Yankees, everything went downhill. And I still don't know why people are pitching fast, throwing fastballs to him. Why? Just, do you like losing? Do you want to be historic? Is that why? I don't get it. You know what else I don't get? Why aren't more people talking about how good the Dodgers are this season? Look at this. This does not include Walker Buehler or Dustin May. Buehler's out now. May has just come back. Like, that's how good this team is. Oh, and, Trevor Bauer was a talented pitcher. If he's guilty of the things he did, he's a terrible person, but he's also not pitching. So this is a pitching staff that doesn't have Cy Young guy in Buehler, Cy Young in Bauer, and future Cy Young in May. Julio Urias, 17-7, 2.27 ERA. 708 win percentage. The Cat, Tony Gosselin, 941 with a 2.10 ERA. Tyler Anderson, just plug him in, 15-3. And then Kirsch at 9-3. All sub 3 ERA. So no team has had 4 pitchers finish the season with a 700 percentage winning and sub 3 ERA, minimum 15 games, since ERA became official in 1913. It's ridiculous how good the Dodgers have been. Yet, they still might not break the record of 116 wins set by the Seattle Mariners in 2001. So on June 12th, the Dodgers were 37-23, on pace for 100 wins. They wrapped up a win on Sunday night with a series sweep. They are 64-21 in their last 85 games. They've lost 3 of 27 series and split another. 13-1 in their 5 series with San Francisco, playing a role in the complete breakdown of the club, which last season upended them all. They are just rolling. So, getting to 116 is going to be really, really, really tough. Even though they have 4 games against the Diamondbacks, 6 against the Rockies. So they need to go 12-3 against Arizona. Or they have been 12-3 against Arizona. So there is some hope, but I don't know. It's not going to be the greatest season ever, but it's still worth talking about. They have the 16th best run differential of all time. And 11 of those teams in front of them played in years beginning with an 18. So they're going to soon get past the 1936 Yankees, the 02 Pirates, giving them the 3rd best in the modern era. And only the Bronx Bombers, Yankees of 27 and 39 will remain out of reach. The last team to surrender less than 500 runs in a full season, 1972 Orioles. Dodgers have 458, 3.14 per game. And they're getting almost 50,000 fans a game. So they might go over 4 million. So it's crazy. Really good article from defector.com where some of these, Ginny Searle wrote this article. Really impressive season. And not enough people are discussing it. Like, they're so far ahead of everybody else that not enough talk is going on about the Dodgers. This is a team that has been so good in the last 10 years. Like, it's ridiculous. So how about this? Teams to win 100-plus games in 3 straight full seasons. The Dodgers right now. The Astros from 2017 to 2019. The Yankees from 02 to 04. The 97 to 99 Braves. 69 to 71 Orioles. 42 to 44 Cardinals. 29 to 31 A's. So that's the LA Dodgers are already in that category with 3 straight 100-plus win seasons. But here's the thing. The Dodgers won 106 in 2019 and 2021. The only team to win 105-plus games in 3 straight seasons is the 1942-44 Cardinals. 42, 43, 44. No team has ever done it with 106 wins. And that's what LA could do. So since 2014, the Dodgers are 922 and 581. Again, not enough people are talking about how good this football or this baseball team. Is it jealousy? Maybe. You know, and they do have some superstars. Every player in their roster has been in an all-star game. But I still don't think they're getting the respect. It's like, ho-hum, Dodgers won 106 games again. Seriously? Is it the West Coast thing? Is it that they're so far ahead of everybody? And is this a good thing for your fantasy players? You might not think it is. Here's why I think it is. Guys like Max Muncy, Justin Turner haven't had great seasons. They want this time when things are red hot to turn it around. Guys also that are having good seasons can get a little bit of rest. If you're in a playoff format like UFLB that goes into the playoffs, you want your guys healthy and rested and ready to go. Also, maybe some guys will relax a little bit. Maybe this allows Cody Bellinger to just swing easy because they know they're so far ahead. So I think it's actually a good thing. Some of the pitchers can work on a few things knowing that they have such a good lead. And it's confidence. It's all about building confidence for me heading into the postseason. Doesn't mean you're going to win for sure, but certainly I think it's an impressive story that, like I said, not enough people are talking about. Like, there's more people talking about Shohei Ohtani and the crappy Angels than how good the Dodgers are. That's wrong. It's just wrong. All right. Our top 3 today was week 3 questions. And one of the questions I have is, are your Dolphins for real when it comes to fantasy? They're going to get tested against the Bills for sure. Could the Falcons be your answer? They've given up almost 60 points in 2 weeks. Start your Seahawks. And in Joe you trust, Joe Flacco, putting up some fantasy points so far, getting it done for the Jets. Do not trust Joe long term, but right now he could be filling a void, especially if you're somebody that lost a guy like Dak Prescott, etc. Zdeno Chara retiring yesterday. We talked about Chara, Keith Yandel, and PK Subban. This is incredible. He signed a one-day contract with Boston and just one of 3 players in NHL history to score a goal before turning 22 and after turning 45, joining Gordie Howe. That is definitely very cool. Brett Ritchie signing a 1-year $750,000 deal with the Calgary Flames. So there you go. That's some news. I'll just see if we got anything else going on here in the world of signings. Corey Schneider has signed with the New York Islanders. I thought Corey Schneider was retiring, but he signs for the league minimum of $750,000. Nikita Shoshinkov signs a $750,000 deal with the New York Islanders as well. And I think that's it for signings today. I did see some news that Slater Cuckoo is missing Oiler camp to deal with some mental health issues. And I will just say, I think that's excellent. I don't think it's excellent that he's having mental health issues, obviously. I think it's excellent that he's addressing them and taking some time. Like I said, I just did this in April. I took some time off and actually got my head right, and because things were wrong. So bravo to Slater Cuckoo. Hopefully he will return to the Edmonton Oilers and the roster at some point. Kyle Davidson of the Blackhawks GM saying they are not anywhere near dealing Patrick Kane or Jonathan Toews, meaning basically nobody's coming up to his asking price. That's what it is. They would be close to trading Kane and Toews if they got the asking price. You don't want to go through this whole season, every visitor stop you go to, and Kane and Toews are answering the same questions. They want to get traded now. Fantasy GMs want them traded now. Chicago Blackhawk fans probably want to know what they're getting back now. It's just that Davidson doesn't have his asking price, so that's why he's saying he's nowhere near trading these guys.
Child, please.
Come on, we don't buy that. We know if you got your asking price, you would have traded both of them. Nobody wants that distraction. Bruce Boudreau saying not making the playoffs would be a big disaster for the Canucks. Not signing Bo Horvat long-term would be an even bigger disaster for the Vancouver Canucks. So let's hope that gets done, but it does not sound like they are very close. I'm guessing Horvat wants something that starts with an 8, and the Canucks would like something that starts with a 7. Split the middle and go for 7.5. Get it done long-term. Oh, this is interesting, too. I just saw this. Brendan Shanahan has informed Kyle Dubas no extension is coming for right now. Pierre LeBrun tweeting, Dubas says he was informed by Brendan Shanahan this summer that no extension was coming at this point in time, which again, the Leafs GM insists he's okay with given the fact they haven't delivered yet in the playoffs. He's comfortable being judged after this season. Yeah, doesn't that seem fair to everyone? I mean, win a playoff round, get an extension. How about that? That seems like where it should be. And I'm not saying this is Kyle Dubas' fault because he doesn't play the games. He put together, I think, a decent roster, obviously top heavy, but good enough. Other teams have gotten past the first round that are also top heavy. So while I agree with this, if you're not going to win a playoff round, you shouldn't be the GM and you go somewhere and you find success there. Doesn't mean he's a bad GM, just like Dallas Eakins in Edmonton. Wasn't a great coach here, but is doing a better job in Anaheim. So if Kyle Dubas doesn't get to the playoffs, he's going to be looking for a job. I think that's normal. Now, having said that, this is on the players. This is totally on the players, man. The GM has given them the tools, and they have fallen flat. So for me, it's on the players. They had a franchise best 115 points last year, and still, like, what did Kyle Dubas do in the playoffs? Wasn't his fault. So I still think that if he doesn't win, he's probably right to not get any kind of extension. And this is an interesting situation. We talked with Tom Gazzola about Jacob Chychrun. He wants out, but where is he going to go? And Tom brought up the fact that, teams right now are trying to, they're trying to figure out the cap. There's not a lot of teams that have a massive amount of cap other than teams like Arizona. Chychrun's 4.6, so you got to look at the cap numbers. I don't even know if there is. Okay, so you got to get down to the Winnipeg Jets. The Winnipeg Jets have exactly 4.6. So there are 9 teams that could fit Chychrun in right now. And obviously you would have to trade back some cap. Like the Edmonton Oilers would probably be like to trade Barry. They like to probably, especially if they're bringing Chychrun back in. But what else has to go into that? And Jesse Puljujarvi, as Tom and I talked about, probably not a good centerpiece for a trade. I don't think you are going to get a player of Jacob Chychrun for Puljujarvi as the centerpiece, or you're giving up a lot of picks because you also get the salary. You have to get the salary out as well. So, all right. Thanks so much, everybody, for dropping in the show today. Appreciate the chatter, the comments, and just watching. Also, big thanks to Andy McNamara. Remember, Ultimate Fantasy Football Sundays at 11 a.m. right here on twitch.tv/Ultimate Fantasy Sports. And we heard from Tom Gazzola, who hosts the TSN 1260 post-game show on TSN 1260 when the Oilers are in action. And he's also a correspondent for NHL.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We're back again tomorrow, 4 to 6. Big hockey show tomorrow. We will have Marty Murray, GM of the Brandon Wheat Kings, Guy Flaming of the Pipeline Show to preview the WHL, and we will take a look at some forwards you need to look at in the NHL. We'll also get you prepped for the Browns and the Steelers. This has been Ultimate Fantasy Sports Daily. My name is Dean Millard. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your Wednesday evening. Take care.
Thanks now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.